Monday morning. The kind that feels too bright for the kind of week you know is coming. The air outside my apartment was sharp, cold. Atlanta in early February always had that kind of chill that made your breath visible. I stood in front of the mirror, tugging at the sleeves of my navy blazer, telling myself I looked ready, confident, collected, like the kind of woman who had her life together, the kind my mother always prayed I'd become. But the truth? I was tired. Tired in that quiet way only people who work twice as hard just to be seen as half as capable would understand. I worked at Henderson & Lowe, one of those law firms where every hallway whispered power, polished floors, expensive art, and people who smiled with their mouths but not their eyes. I'd been there for 4 years, started as an intern, clawed my way up to a paralegal. Every step was proof that I belonged, even when the room tried to tell me I didn't. That morning, I carried my coffee like armor, hoping the caffeine would make me invisible. The elevator ride felt longer than usual. Everyone stood facing forward, scrolling through phones, pretending not to see each other. Just another Monday. When the doors opened, the first thing I saw was Lauren. Perfect hair, perfect heels, perfect everything. She gave me that smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Morning, Kiara," she said, voice sugar sweet. "Morning," I replied, forcing a polite smile. I'd learned long ago. In corporate America, you say less, smile more, and keep receipts for everything. My desk sat by the window overlooking the downtown skyline. The city looked alive, almost humming. I set my coffee down, booted up my computer, and there it was. 137 unread emails. I sighed. Another battlefield disguised as an inbox. Then I saw it. Subject line: urgent. Contract revision. Error found. Sevens. This one's for you. And if stories like this speak to your heart, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next one. The kind of subject that makes your stomach drop before you even click. I opened it, and my eyes froze. Attached was a version of a client contract, one I'd worked on last week. But this version, it wasn't mine. A key clause, the one that protected the client's liability, was missing. Gone. And below, in bold red letters, someone had written, "Sevens, this is unacceptable. Who approved this?" Sevens. My name was in the CC line. My name. For a moment, I just stared at the screen. The sound of office chatter faded, replaced by the pounding of my own heartbeat. I clicked through my sent folder, my drafts, every backup file I had. The document I sent last Friday was perfect, reviewed twice, time-stamped, signed off. No error. But the version on the server now looked like my work, except it wasn't. I felt my palms start to sweat. Someone had changed it. Someone had gone into the system and edited the file after I'd submitted it. Before I could even process what was happening, my phone buzzed. It was an email from Mr. Coleman, the senior partner. "Kiara, come to the 17th floor conference room immediately." My throat tightened. Coleman didn't do immediately unless it was bad. I straightened my blazer, wiped my hands on my skirt, and tried to breathe. As I walked through the glass hallway, I caught my reflection, calm on the outside, chaos on the inside. Every footstep echoed like a countdown. When I entered the room, the air felt heavier. Coleman sat at the head of the table, reading something on his iPad. Lauren was there too, seated across from him, pretending to look concerned. 2 other associates whispered to each other, then stopped when they saw me. "Kiara, please have a seat," Coleman said, without looking up. I sat down, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. He turned the tablet toward me. "Did you send this version to the client?"
Sevens.
It was the same contract, the same missing clause. "I know, sir," I said quickly. "That's not the document I submitted. My version included that clause." "Sevens," Lauren spoke up, her voice soft but cutting. "Sevens, I found this version in the shared drive, labeled with Kiara's initials. I'm sure it was just an oversight. But you know how important precision is here." "Sevens." She looked at me, that fake concern on her face, like she was doing me a favor while quietly watching me drown. Coleman sighed. "This mistake cost us 48 hours of review time. The client is not happy. I need to know how this happened." I opened my mouth to explain, but he held up a hand. "Not now. Just fix it. And, Kiara, moving forward, make sure this doesn't happen again." Sevens, that's the thing about being a black woman in a white-dominated office. Sometimes, your words arrive late. People stop listening halfway through your sentence. So I nodded. Quiet. Respectful. The way we're taught to survive. As soon as I left the room, I felt my body shaking. Not from fear, from anger. Because I knew exactly what this was. Lauren had access to my folder. She'd been hovering around that project all week, asking for minor clarifications, forwarding files back and forth. And now, conveniently, the version with her edits was the one that made it to the client, with my name on it. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I walked back to my desk, my head high, my jaw tight. That's the trick. You don't let them see you crack. As I sat down, the whispers had already started. I could feel the weight of them, the sideways glances, the sudden silences when I walked by. It's strange how quickly a reputation can shift in places like this. One day you're dependable. The next, you're the one who messed up the contract. I tried to focus, but my inbox kept filling. Questions, CCs, urgent follow-ups. Sevens. It felt like drowning in slow motion. Around noon, Lauren stopped by my desk. She leaned against the divider, her tone light. "Rough morning, huh?" she said. I looked up at her, trying to read what was behind her smile. "Yeah," I said flatly. "You could say that." She shrugged. "Don't take it too hard. Mistakes happen." Sevens. Then she walked away, heels clicking against the marble, leaving behind a scent of expensive perfume and fake sympathy. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this story. If it spoke to you, hit subscribe and stay tuned for more stories that inspire and empower. I sat there, staring at the screen. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but I couldn't type. Something in me was breaking, not from what she'd done, but from how easily everyone believed her. And that's when I thought of my mother. Her voice echoed in my mind like a soft hymn. "Sevens, baby, the world won't always be fair to you, but speak the truth, even when your voice shakes." Sevens. I took a slow breath. This wasn't just about a contract anymore. It was about my name, my work, my integrity. And I knew, in that moment, I couldn't let it slide. I didn't know how yet. Sevens. But I was going to prove it. Because sometimes, The truth doesn't come quietly. Sometimes it has to fight its way through noise, lies, and boardrooms full of people who've already decided who you are. That morning, Sevens, I realized they might have underestimated me, but they were about to learn exactly who I was. They say the truth has a way of revealing itself, but in corporate America, lies always travel faster. By Tuesday morning, my inbox was already on fire. Every urgent message, every meeting invite, every polite checking in felt like another layer of pressure wrapping tighter around my chest. And in every hallway whisper, I could hear my name, Kiara, the girl who made the mistake, the girl who cost the firm a client. It's wild how quickly a rumor becomes a fact when the right people say it loud enough. I kept my head down, pretending not to notice. But when people stop looking you in the eyes, you notice. You always notice. I used to walk through those halls with pride. My steps used to sound confident. That morning, they sounded like echoes. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this story. If it spoke to you, hit subscribe and stay tuned for more stories that inspire and empower. Lauren walked by my desk like she owned the place, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, her laughter floating down the corridor like perfume. She stopped for just a second, enough to flash me that polished smile. "Hang in there," she said, soft but sharp. The kind of tone that sounds like concern, but cuts like a blade. I wanted to ask her why. Why she did it. Why she thought she could play me like that. But I didn't. Not yet. Because I've learned sometimes the best revenge is patience. By noon, Coleman called for a team meeting. I felt the shift before he even spoke. Everyone avoided my eyes, typing fake notes, sipping water they didn't need. Coleman stood by the whiteboard, his voice calm, too calm. "The contract issue has caused some unnecessary confusion," he said. "We'll need to rebuild client confidence. Let's review internal processes to prevent future errors." His eyes slid toward me, just for a second. Not angry, not accusing. Worse. Disappointed. That kind of look that sticks to your skin. Lauren jumped in like she'd been waiting for her cue. "I think maybe we can introduce a double review process," she suggested. "Just to make sure nothing slips through again. I can help oversee it, if that's okay." The room nodded. Coleman smiled. Of course, she'd volunteer. I sat there, silent, while everyone acted like she'd just saved the firm. I could feel heat rising in my throat. The same fire that used to make me shrink, now it made me steel. When the meeting ended, I gathered my notes, calm, deliberate, pretending not to hear the quiet murmurs behind me. One of the interns whispered, "Poor Kiara. Poor Kiara." Like I was some sad story they'd tell new hires. I wanted to turn around, look them straight in the eyes, and say, "Don't feel sorry for me. Watch me." But I didn't. Not yet. That afternoon, Lauren came to my cubicle again. She leaned against the wall, crossing her arms like she was here to mentor me. "Hey," she said, lowering her voice. "I know this has been rough. Don't let it get to you, okay? These things happen." I looked at her, calm, steady, but inside, my pulse was thunder. "Thanks," I said, my tone flat, polite. She tilted her head, smiling like she'd already won. "Good. Keep your chin up, girl." Then she walked away, leaving that faint trail of victory in her wake. I stared at her back as she walked down the hall, that sway in her step, the confidence of someone who knew the system was built for her. I knew then. She wasn't just trying to ruin me. She was testing me, seeing how much I'd take before breaking. Because that's what people like her do. They poke and prod until you shrink enough to fit their story. But I wasn't about to fit anyone's story but my own. That night, I stayed late. The office was dark except for the glow of the city lights bouncing off the glass walls. Everyone else had gone home, even the janitor. Just me, my computer, and the hum of the AC that sounded like a heartbeat. I replayed everything in my mind, the emails, the meeting, the way Lauren looked at me when she said, "Hang in there." And I knew. Something wasn't right. I opened the project logs. Every document had a digital fingerprint, timestamps, version numbers, edits. I'd been trained to check them. I started scrolling through the records, eyes burning, fingers cold against the keyboard. At first, everything looked normal. But then I saw it. An edit logged at 2:17 a.m., 2 days after I submitted the final version. The initials L, H, were right next to it. Lauren. She'd edited it from her account. My breath caught. That was my proof. But I couldn't show it yet, not without risking it being deleted or covered up. So I printed the log, saved backups on a drive, sent one to my personal email. Every click felt like reclaiming a piece of myself they'd tried to take. As I was about to leave, I heard footsteps. Lauren. She stood in the doorway, surprise flickering across her face. "Oh," she said. "You're still here." "Sevens?" "Yeah," I replied without looking up. "Just finishing some revisions." "Sevens." She smiled, but her eyes scanned my screen. "Be careful, Kiara," she said softly. "Working too late can make people sloppy." Sevens. And then she was gone. I sat there for a long time, staring at the reflection of her shadow fading down the hallway. That was her warning. Her way of saying she knew I was getting close. The kind of threat people like her never say directly. They just plant it in your mind and let it grow roots. I leaned back in my chair, breathing slow. Fear wanted to creep in, but something louder drowned it out. My mother's voice. "Speak the truth, baby, even when your voice shakes." I whispered it out loud, just to hear it fill the empty office. The next morning, everything felt different. The sky was gray, like the city knew what was coming. I walked into the office earlier than usual, clutching my coffee like armor again. People greeted me with half smiles, half pity. But I didn't care anymore. I wasn't here to survive the whispers. I was here to end them. Coleman called me into his office mid-morning. "Sit down," he said. His voice was careful, measured. "Lauren's been helping us rebuild the client relationship. She mentioned she'd like to mentor you through the process." I almost laughed. "Mentor me?" I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. He nodded. "She's been here longer, Kiara. Learn from her. It'll be good for your development." I smiled tightly. "Of course." The thing about people like Coleman, they think fairness is a matter of tone. If they say something gently enough, it won't sting. But I felt every word. Because behind every "learn from her," what he really meant was stay in your place. When I got back to my desk, Lauren was already waiting. "Guess we're teammates now," she said brightly. "Exciting, huh?" She sat on the edge of my desk, scrolling through her phone like she owned it. I wanted to ask her if she even knew what it meant to work for something, to build something from the ground up. But instead, I said, yeah, exciting. Sevens. All day, she hovered, offering suggestions, correcting my wording, telling me how she liked to do things. It wasn't mentorship. It was a reminder of power, of hierarchy, of who gets believed. At lunch, I sat alone in the break room, scrolling through my phone, trying to focus on anything but her voice echoing in my head. A news headline caught my eye. Justice delayed is not justice denied. I smiled to myself. Maybe, but it's damn sure exhausting. When I came back, a sticky note waited on my keyboard. Don't forget, mistakes happen, but patterns get noticed. No name, no initials, but I knew. I crumpled it slowly, watching the paper twist in my hand. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even tell anyone. I just stayed quiet, the kind of quiet that comes before a storm. Because I'd seen this game before, and I knew. If she wanted a performance, I'd give her one. But I'd be the one writing the ending. So I stayed later again, double-checking every document, every line, every log. I built my case silently, one piece at a time. Lauren wanted me to feel powerless, but I was collecting power with every click. And somewhere between 10 mitos and midnight, I stopped being the woman who was blamed. I became the woman who was building her revenge. By the time I left, the city lights had softened, and the reflection in the window wasn't the same Kiara who walked into that boardroom on Monday. This one had fire in her eyes. Not rage. Conviction. Because now I knew the truth, and I had proof. And as I walked out into the cold night air, I whispered to myself, Sevens. They wanted to blame me for a mistake I didn't make. But they're about to learn what happens when the wrong woman gets accused. Sevens. When I finally got home that night, I didn't turn on the lights. The city outside was loud, alive, moving like it didn't care who broke today. But my apartment, it was still. Too still. I dropped my bag by the couch, and when it hit the floor, it sounded heavier than it should have, like it carried every word they threw at me. Sloppy. Careless. Unprofessional. I could still hear Lauren's voice echoing through the glass walls of that boardroom, sweet and poisonous. And the look on my boss's face, like disappointment had already signed my resignation letter. I sat there in the dark, shoes still on, hands trembling, mascara smudged. My throat burned with all the words I wanted to say but didn't. The kind of words that get stuck between pride and fear. The air smelled like coffee and cold rain. I reached for my phone, not even knowing what I wanted to do with it. Maybe scroll through something meaningless, maybe pretend this day never happened. But when the screen lit up, there it was, an old voicemail from my mom, dated 3 months ago. I hadn't played it since the funeral. My thumb hovered over the play button. My heart said don't. My soul said do it. And then her voice filled the room. Hey, baby, I just wanted to check on you. Don't forget to eat, okay? You always skip dinner when you're stressed. Sevens. Her laugh, soft, warm, like sunlight through church windows, wrapped around me. Listen, Kiara, the world won't always see your worth right away. But you keep showing up, baby. You keep standing tall. Even when your voice shakes, even when they don't clap, speak the truth anyway. Sevens. I froze. Tears just happened. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind that sneak down your face when you realize how much you've been holding in. I pressed the phone closer, like if I could just get a little nearer, she'd still be here. "Mama," I whispered into the air. "They tried to break me today." Heavens. And I swear for a second, I could almost hear her reply. "You ain't built to break, baby. You built to rise." The words hit something deep, deeper than pain, deeper than fear. It was that kind of ache that only truth can touch. I sat there replaying the voicemail again and again until every syllable carved itself into my bones. "Even when your voice shakes," she'd said. I repeated it under my breath. "Even when your voice shakes." Heavens. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this story. If it spoke to you, hit subscribe and stay tuned for more stories that inspire and empower. Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline. I looked out my window. The city lights were blurred by rain. Somewhere out there, people were laughing, living, not knowing that one woman was sitting in her apartment trying to remember how to breathe. I wasn't angry anymore. I was tired. Tired of working twice as hard to be seen half as much. Tired of smiling through disrespect. Tired of shrinking myself so they'd feel big. But Mama's voice wouldn't let me stay small. Not tonight. So I stood up. I walked to the mirror. And for the first time all day, I looked at myself. My reflection looked worn out, but not weak. My hair frizzed, my eyes swollen, but there was something behind them. Fire. The kind she used to have when she said grace before a hard day. I whispered, "You raised me better than this." Heavens. And something inside me answered back. "Then prove it." That's when I opened my laptop again. Midnight. The glow of the screen painted my face blue, and my fingers started moving before my fear could stop them. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for yet. I just knew I wasn't done. I couldn't be. If they wanted to bury me under their lies, fine. But I'd dig through every layer until I found the truth. And as I started searching through the company's archive logs, that voicemail kept looping in my head. Sevens. Speak the truth, even when your voice shakes. Sevens. It became rhythm. A heartbeat. A war drum. Every click of my mouse sounded like defiance. Every scroll, like a prayer. I checked timestamps, revision trails, metadata, all the things they thought I wouldn't know how to read. They didn't know I grew up watching my mama balance bills on a kitchen counter while quoting scripture and case law from her night classes. I came from women who found a way when there was no way. So yeah, Lauren might have had the corner office. But I had something she'd never understand. Grit that's been baptized in struggle. By 2A. M. I found something. Just a small line of data at first. A time code. 17A. The system log said, "Edited by L." I blinked. Read it again. My hands shook. That was Lauren's account. My breath caught in my chest. There it was. The proof. Not just of my innocence, but of who she really was. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, heart pounding in my ears. And I smiled. Not the sweet kind, the knowing kind. The kind that said, "You tried to play me, but you just lost your game." The rain outside stopped. The world went quiet again. For the first time in days, I felt light. Mama's words echoed again, softer this time, like a whisper from somewhere beyond the walls. You did good, baby. You did real good. Sevens. I closed the laptop, sat in silence for a while, and let the tears come, not from pain this time, but from release, from gratitude, from the kind of strength that's born when you finally remember who the hell you are. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't need to, because the next morning, I knew exactly what I was going to do. And this time, I wasn't going to whisper. They say silence can heal you. But that night, silence felt like gasoline, and my anger was the match. I sat in front of my laptop with the lights still off, the glow of the screen cutting through the dark like a blade. The office was empty now, but my mind was still there, trapped in that boardroom, surrounded by polished smiles and sharpened tongues. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lauren's face, that fake concern, that rehearsed sympathy, that perfect little head tilt when she said, "We all make mistakes, Kiara," like she was blessing me with pity. I almost believed her for a second. Almost. But now I knew better. The file log stared back at me. A mess of numbers, times, and hidden signatures, things most people ignore. But not me. Not tonight. I'd spent years in this firm watching people like Lauren play chess while women like me were expected to clean the board. But Mama didn't raise no pawn. She raised a queen who learned how every piece moves. So I moved, carefully, patiently. I opened the archive, layer by layer, clicking through encrypted folders that the IT team thought only they could reach. Every sound felt amplified, the click of the mouse, the hum of the hard drive, my own heartbeat drumming against the walls of my chest. At 1:03 M. I found the first clue, a backup file that wasn't supposed to exist. The system labeled it Draft A2 Revised. I opened it and froze. There it was, the clause, the one they claimed I deleted, still intact, still dated from my last edit, untouched. I whispered to myself, "You really thought you were slick, huh, Lauren?" But it wasn't proof yet. Not the kind that could burn down a liar's kingdom. Not the kind that would make them look me in the eyes and say sorry. I needed more. So I went deeper. Past the shared drives, into the audit trail. And that's when I saw it. The timestamp. 2:17. The same clause had been removed, not from my login, but from hers. L. Shh. My chest tightened. I leaned closer, staring at those two letters, the same initials printed on every project she'd ever stolen credit for. There was something satisfying about seeing it there, black and white, unshakable. Like the truth was finally tired of hiding. My hands were trembling, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was adrenaline. The kind that comes when you realize you've been right all along, but no one believed you. I printed the logs, every line, every timestamp, every file path. The printer's sound filled my apartment, loud, rhythmic, almost musical. Each page sliding out felt like a heartbeat, steady, strong, alive. I stacked the pages neatly on the table, pressed my hand against them, and said quietly, "They're not going to break me, Mama. Not this time." Sevens. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The fan spun slow, and the shadows danced across my walls. For the first time, I didn't feel powerless. I felt dangerous. Because now I had something they didn't, truth. And truth, once it's out, don't go back in the bottle. I closed my eyes and saw tomorrow's meeting already playing out in my head. The same cold boardroom. The same polished table. But this time, when they looked at me, they'd see something they never expected. A black woman who refused to bow. Then a thought hit me. What if she tried to cover her tracks? I turned back to the screen, my mind sharp again. I started cross-checking login locations, tracing the IP from the time of the edit. New York office. But at that time, Lauren was supposed to be in Chicago for a conference. I smirked, caught in her own web. She must have logged in remotely from her hotel, thinking no one would notice. She was wrong. I opened the metadata log and took screenshots, saving them to a hidden folder. Evidence layered like armor. By 3:40 a.m. I had everything I needed. The rain outside had turned to mist, soft against the windows. I sat in silence, the kind that comes after a storm, the kind that tastes like victory before the battle even starts. My reflection in the dark screen stared back at me, and I didn't see the same woman from earlier that day. I didn't see the scared employee waiting for permission to exist. I saw my mother's daughter, sharp, steady, unbroken. The world likes to talk about strength like it's loud. But real strength? It's quiet. It's a woman sitting alone at 4 a.m. Eyes red, heart tired, still choosing to fight anyway. It's not about shouting. It's about showing up. Again. And again. Until truth finally bows its head. I gathered every printed page, slipped them into a folder, labeled it with one word. Proof. I held it for a moment, feeling its weight. This wasn't just paper. This was my redemption. My mother's lesson made tangible. I kissed the edge of the folder, whispered, "This is for you," and placed it gently inside my work bag. The city outside was starting to wake. I could hear the faint sound of buses, the hum of early risers chasing another day. I hadn't slept, but I didn't need to. Sleep is for the safe. I was past that now. I brewed myself a cup of coffee, black, no sugar, and took a slow sip. Bitter. Strong. Just how I liked it. The kind that reminds you what survival tastes like. As the first light touched my window, I looked at my reflection one last time. The same tired eyes, but now they carried something new. Resolve. The kind that don't need permission. The kind that's earned, not given. I smiled. You really messed with the wrong one, Lauren. 7s. Then I picked up my bag, slung it over my shoulder, and walked out the door. The morning air hit my face like a promise. Cold. Clear. Honest. Just the way I planned to be when I stepped back into that office. And as the elevator doors closed behind me, I could almost hear Mama's voice again, faint but firm, wrapping around me like armor. Go get your justice, baby. But keep your grace while you do it. 7s. So I did. Because revenge ain't about rage, it's about restoration. And tomorrow, I was taking mine back. You ever walk into a room and feel the air shift before anyone says a word? That's what it felt like when I stepped into that boardroom again. Same long oak table, same high-backed chairs, same faces pretending they didn't once throw me to the wolves. But this time, they didn't own the room. I did. They just didn't know it yet. I took my time walking in, heels clicking against the floor like a metronome counting down the seconds to their reckoning. The man at the head of the table, Marcus, cleared his throat, trying to fill the silence I'd brought with me. "Simone," he said, voice too smooth, too practiced. "Glad you could make it." I smiled, slow and deliberate. "Oh, I wouldn't miss it for the world." I could feel their eyes darting across the table, from me to the folder in my hand. They thought it was a presentation, another report to review, another file to bury. But it wasn't. It was everything they'd tried to hide. Numbers cooked, deals rewritten, names erased, all wrapped up in one neat, black binder. "You've been busy," Marcus said, trying to sound casual. "You could say that," I replied. "Some of us don't take vacations when the company's bleeding." A few of them shifted in their seats. One woman, Helen, the one who'd stayed silent when they voted to cut me out, couldn't even look at me. I didn't blame her. Guilt has its own kind of weight. I opened the binder, turned it around, and slid it across the table. "Before we start," I said, "you might want to take a look at this." Marcus leaned forward, scanning the first page. Then the second. His jaw tightened. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "From the truth," I said simply. "And you know what they say. It always finds its way back." The room went quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes from peace, the kind that comes from fear. The kind that seeps into your bones. "Simone," he said finally, "you don't want to do this." I tilted my head. "You think I haven't already?" I stood there, watching the empire that once swallowed me whole start to crumble from the inside. Every lie they told, every name they erased, every door they slammed in my face, it was all right there, unraveling in front of them. And maybe, for the first time, they saw me not as the woman they underestimated, but as the storm they created. The thing is, revenge wasn't even the plan. It never was. I just wanted the truth. I wanted to walk into that building and know I didn't need to shrink to fit into someone else's version of power. But once you've been burned, once they've made you doubt your own worth, there's something inside you that changes. You stop begging for a seat at the table. You start building your own. As Marcus tried to talk his way out, words slipping, voice cracking, I realized something. They weren't the monsters I'd imagined. They were just scared men in expensive suits, clinging to a system built on silence. And me? I was done being silent. "I'm not here to destroy you," I said finally. "I'm here to remind you. I survived you." I turned toward the window. The city stretched out below us, the same skyline I used to stare at when I thought my life was over. Funny how perspective changes once you reclaim your power. "Simone," Marcus said softly, almost pleading now. "We can fix this." I looked back at him. You can't fix what you broke pretending it wasn't shattered. And with that, I walked out. No dramatic exit, no slamming doors. Just calm, the kind that comes when you finally let go of the version of yourself they tried to destroy. The elevator doors closed behind me, and I caught my reflection in the mirrored wall. No fear, no hesitation, just clarity. Somewhere deep down, I whispered to myself, "You did it. You came back not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right." The city lights flickered as the elevator descended, each floor taking me further away from who I used to be. When the doors opened, I stepped into the lobby, into my next chapter. They say silence is powerful, but nobody tells you it can be deafening too. When those elevator doors closed, it wasn't applause I heard. It was everything they'd ever said echoing back at me. The whispers, the doubt, the way they looked at me like I was too much and never enough at the same time. I thought walking away would feel like victory, but it didn't. It felt quiet, heavy, like freedom wrapped in loneliness. Because the truth is, nobody prepares you for what comes after the revenge. The part where you stand in the mirror, face still, makeup perfect, and realize you got everything you wanted, and somehow it still hurts. I walked out of that building a different woman. But that night, when I got home, I sat on my couch in the dark, heels still on, lights off, phone buzzing with messages I didn't want to read. You did it, Simone. You showed them. You're unstoppable. And maybe I was. But being unstoppable is exhausting when all you really wanted was peace. I stared at the city lights through my window. Every flicker looked like a heartbeat, alive, fragile, constant. I thought about every night I stayed up building their dream, every time I swallowed my anger just to keep my job, every time they told me I was lucky to be there. And now, I wasn't there anymore. I'd burned the bridge and the forest around it. So I asked myself the only question that mattered. What now? For a long time, I didn't have the answer. I thought maybe I'd start my own firm or take a long vacation, but none of it felt right. Because deep down, I didn't want to escape the world I came from. I wanted to change it. I wanted the next black girl who walked into a boardroom to feel like she belonged, not like she had to fight for air. So I started small. One step, one message, one post that said, "You don't have to become what hurt you to survive it." It went viral overnight. Not because it was perfect, but because it was true. Thousands of women wrote to me, some I'd never met, some still sitting in those same glass towers, whispering their own stories into the dark. Stories of being overlooked, underpaid, underestimated. Stories that sounded too much like mine. And suddenly, I wasn't alone anymore. The silence I carried for years broke open, not in anger, but in connection. That's when I realized revenge was never the ending. It was just the opening act. The real story began when I started healing. Healing doesn't look like champagne toasts and perfect endings. It looks like therapy appointments you're scared to go to. It looks like forgiving yourself for staying too long, and then forgiving them for not seeing you. It looks like waking up one morning and realizing your power doesn't come from being invited to their table. It comes from building your own and leaving the door open for others. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this story. If it spoke to you, hit subscribe and stay tuned for more stories that inspire and empower. A few months later, I got an invitation from a woman I'd never met. She was starting a foundation for women of color in leadership and wanted me to speak at the launch. I almost said no. The idea of walking back into another glass building made my chest tighten. But something in me said, this time, it's different. The day of the event, I stood backstage, listening to the hum of the crowd. Hundreds of women, dressed sharp, eyes bright. For a second, I thought about the old me, the one who used to sit in the back, taking notes, waiting for permission to shine. She was gone now, but I still carried her with me. Every scar, every doubt, every lesson. When I walked onto that stage, the applause hit like a wave. I took a breath, looked out at them, and said, "They told me I was too emotional to lead, too direct to be liked, too ambitious to fit in." So I stopped fitting in and started standing out. The crowd went still. You could feel it, that quiet recognition that we were all fighting the same battle, just in different rooms. I told them what I wish someone had told me years ago, that success built on fear isn't success, it's survival. That the goal isn't to win their game, but to rewrite the rules. And that the strongest thing a woman can be in a world that profits from her silence is loud. When I stepped off that stage, a young intern ran up to me, eyes wide, shaking. She said, "Ms. Simone, I watched your story online. I almost quit last month, but then I saw what you did. You made me believe I could fight too." Sevens. And right there, I realized something I hadn't before. Maybe I didn't get my revenge by exposing them. Maybe I got it by becoming someone their system could never break again. Later that night, I went home and stood by my window again. Same city, same skyline. But it looked different now. Not like a battlefield, like a beginning. I thought about Marcus, about that boardroom, about how I once believed their approval was the finish line. But power doesn't come from proving you belong to them. It comes from knowing you don't need to. I whispered to myself, "You made it out, girl. And you made it better." Then I smiled, not the polished smile I used to wear at meetings, but something softer, real. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't fighting anymore. I was free. And maybe that's what revenge really is. Not fire, not fury, not the moment they crumble, but the moment you rise, quietly, beautifully, on your own terms. Because the story didn't end in that boardroom. It began the moment I walked out. And maybe that's the lesson. The fire that tried to destroy me was the same one that forged me. People ask me sometimes, "Kiara, after everything you went through, do you ever regret it? The fight, the noise, the pain?" Sevens. And I always tell them, no. Because regret is heavy, but truth sets you free. For a long time, I thought revenge was the end of the story, the moment they fall and I rise. But it's not. Revenge only gave me silence. Truth gave me peace. And peace, that's what my mama wanted for me all along. I still remember her voice. That night after it all ended, I played her message again. "Baby," she said, "this world gon' test you in ways I can't prepare you for. But don't you ever let them make you small. Don't you ever dim that light God put in you. You fight with grace, not rage. You win with truth, not lies." Sevens. Back then, I didn't understand how much those words would save me. But now, I do. Because what my mama knew, and what I had to learn the hard way, is that when a Black woman tells the truth in a world built on silence, it shakes everything. It shakes the walls, the stories, the systems. And it scares people, not because she's angry, but because she's free. You see, growing up Black in America, we're taught two things real early. Sevens. 1, you gotta be twice as good to get half as far. 2, don't make too much noise when you get there. And for years, I lived by that. I smiled when I wanted to scream. I thanked them when they stole my credit. I softened my words, shrank my dreams, straightened my hair, just to make them comfortable. But comfort never built change. And silence never saved anybody. So when that email was changed, when they tried to make me the scapegoat for their mistake, something inside me snapped. Or maybe it clicked. Because I realized my mother didn't raise me to survive lies. She raised me to stand in truth, even when my voice shakes. And when I did, everything changed. Not just for me, but for the women watching. The interns who DM'd me saying, "I saw what you did, and I told the truth too." The managers who said, "I'll never overlook a voice like yours again." Sevens. That's when I knew this wasn't just my story, it was ours. Every Black woman who's ever been called aggressive for speaking up. Every sister who got passed over for being too ambitious. And every one of us who had to learn that strength doesn't mean silence. It means surviving the noise and still choosing grace. We are not what they label us. We are what we build together. I think about my mama a lot now, about how she never got the chances I did, about how she worked twice as hard for half the praise, and how, even in her exhaustion, she told me to keep going. She didn't just want me to climb, she wanted me to lift. And that's the part people miss about our stories. Revenge isn't the point. Restoration is. Because when one of us rises, the world gets a little wider for the next. Now, when I walk into a boardroom, I don't see glass ceilings anymore. I see reflections of the women who came before me, the ones who held doors open, even when their hands were shaking. And every time I speak, I hear her voice again, soft, steady, full of power. Sevens, baby, tell the truth, even if your voice trembles, especially then. That's my legacy now. Not revenge. Not bitterness. Just truth. Truth loud enough to echo in every hallway they once tried to silence me in. So if you're listening to this right now, if you're sitting in your car after work, hands shaking, heart heavy because they blamed you for something you didn't do, listen to me. You are not crazy. You are not alone. And you do not need to become what hurt you. The world will always try to make you question your worth. But remember, you come from a line of women who turned survival into art, pain into poetry, and truth into freedom. So don't let anyone convince you that your voice is too much. Because your voice is the revolution they're not ready for. And when it gets hard, and it will, think of my mama's words. Fight with grace. Win with truth. Sevens, because the goal was never to burn the building down. The goal was to light the way out for everyone still inside. So this is me, Kiara James, saying to every Black woman, every dreamer, every truth teller, keep going, keep shining, keep speaking, because somewhere, a girl's watching you, learning that strength can look like softness and victory can sound like peace. And when she asks what courage looks like, I hope she sees you. Standing tall, unapologetic, unbroken, just like Mama said, if this story found you today, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Tag a sister who needs to hear she's enough. Because every time we tell our truth, we make this world a little freer. And that's how we win. Not with revenge, with truth, with love, with each other,